Hi, this is Tony Robbins. Welcome to Live with Passion. Listen, first, I really want to congratulate you on taking the time to listen to this program and for investing in it. And I say that not because you've invested in my date program, but because there's so many people out there that talk a really great game, but they don't live it. You know what I mean? So many people out there say, I want a greater life. I want to achieve this great goal. I have this great dream. I want to turn it into reality. But what do? Usually nothing. Usually day after day, they don't make any real progress towards achieving those goals. They're not investing in themselves in solutions and tools and into ideas that can make a difference. So I want to really congratulate you because you're one of the few who do versus the many who talk. And for that reason, I feel a real kinship with you because what you're doing right now, I've been doing myself for more than 21 years now. What do I mean? Well, I'm talking about listening to audio tapes, attending seminars, reading books, feeling my mind, and then applying what I've learned immediately to get results in my life. And it all started for me many, many years ago, but it started in a day when I finally got fed up, when I finally said, I'm not willing to settle for less than I can be. Never again. And when I found that internal passion, when I made that shift in my life, I've never looked back since then. And that's why this subject means so much to me and why I'm so thrilled that it means enough for you to take the time to really listen to this audio program. So I want to get started, but before I do, let me also say this. You and I are probably a lot more alike than you realize. I mean, think about it. We're both crazy, outrageous people that are saying, I will not settle for less than I can be or do or feel or experience in my life. I mean, if you think about it, there's really a big difference between just merely achieving your goals and living a life of passion. I mean, where you love your life, where you love your career, you love your family, your friends, the people around you, where you look forward to each and every day. Maybe ultimate passion is when you can get to that point where no matter what happens in your life, even when the biggest challenge happens, even when the greatest injustices occur, you just grab a hold of them and you suck the juice out of that experience. You say to yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I apply this? You find a way to use whatever life gives you to create a life of even greater meaning. Now, by the way, is that what most people do? Well, you and I both know the answer is no. I mean, every day you look around and walk around and you see people around you that look half dead. I mean, it makes me sad. There seems to be no joy in their life. There's no drive in these people. They're kind of just surviving. It's like somewhere along the line, they settled for so much less than they could be. And maybe it happened many years ago. Maybe years ago they had great goals and great dreams and a great drive for a life of meaning. But what happened to them? Well, what almost happened to me, what may have happened at one time in your life. They had big goals, they had big dreams, they went for it, they were excited, and they pushed hard. Maybe they disciplined themselves. Maybe they gave their all, and they were disappointed or maybe even betrayed. I know I felt that many times in my life, and I'm sure you have as well. But what do you do with that? That's what determines whether you develop a passionate life or one that you have to constantly make excuses for, or one where inside of you, you have to settle and say, those people out there that are so excited, so passionate, oh, it's phony, it's fake, it's just a bunch of positive thinking. See, what happens for a lot of people is they don't want to be disappointed anymore. So what they do is they disassociate. They start saying, oh, don't get your hopes up. Hey, don't get overly excited about this stuff. Come on, what are you, naive? They become skeptical. They become pessimistic. But the truth is, when people say they're skeptical or they're pessimistic, what they're really saying is, I'm fearful. I mean, people who are skeptical are just afraid of being disappointed. They're afraid of being hurt. They're afraid to feel that feeling that comes from not winning. But listen to me. In any sport, if you're going to be victorious, you've got to be willing to risk that loss, that sense of pain. That also, by the way, that pain may be the very thing that gives you the drive to move forward and achieve more than you ever have before in your life. Michael Jordan is someone I've had the privilege of spending some time with. I mean, talk about a genius in the basketball ring. I'm genius in any sport. He's the best that probably has ever existed there. And when I talked to him the first time, I said, listen, Michael, tell me, your career's had many highs, but when did it just explode to the highest level? I mean, to where you knew your game was at its best. He said, Tony, the biggest thing that's driven me, honestly, was pain. He said, when I lost for the third time in those championships to the Detroit Pistons, he said, it ripped out my soul. It hurt so bad inside. He said, I sat there and I cried on the bus. I felt like somebody had stolen my pride. I felt like no one else had given as much as I had. I felt so bad inside. And you know what happened? Something inside of me just shifted. He said, I just was tired of feeling that way. And I decided I was going to go out that summer and I was going to lift weights and become stronger than I ever had been before. And the next year I was going to dish out the pain. I wasn't going to take it. That we were going to win no matter what. He said, I converted all of that pain into absolute drive. And you know what happened. He won 3 national championships in a row for the Bulls. Took a little break from basketball and came back and did it again. I mean, that's real passion. Finding a way inside yourself when you're exhausted, when you're beat, when someone else seems to have more power or more skill or they're having more luck. And somehow you reach down inside and you convert the pain into power, into drive. Results in life don't come from being motivated. Results in life come from taking action, and that's where the rubber really meets the road. That's where the results really show up. So at the end of each of these tapes, don't just turn the tape off. Use the skill that you learn in that tape all day long. Now, I realize some of these skills will be brand new for you. Most of them probably will be. And when you're new at something, you're not good at it yet. But you know what? Do it anyway, even if you fumble at it. It's okay. Because if you'll take it all day long and apply that skill, I can promise you something. By the end of the day, you'll get good. And when you get good, you'll get results. And those results will reinforce you. And that reinforcement will make these things habits. And pretty soon, this idea of living with passion will be something that is just who you are, not something you work out or think about or dream about or desire. It'll be your experience of life. It'll be a positive addiction. It'll make your life greater and greater with each passing day. And by the way, I want you to know that I respect you. I know your life must already be great, or you wouldn't be pursuing ways to make it better. But I want to make sure that by the end of these 6 tapes, there is a measurable difference in the quality of the levels of joy and happiness and passion, and most importantly, results that you experience in your life. So let's get started. Let's not waste any more time. Let's begin to tap into those skills, into those understandings that can give us an even greater quality of life, an extraordinary life, a life filled with passion. Let us begin. The term I have for this session and the tool I want to share with you, I call it quality quantifiers. In fact, the term is much more technical than the actual tool itself, but I think it's an accurate term to describe what we're going to learn. And by the way, this tool is not so much that it's new or so innovative. It's just that once we're aware of it, it can change our life. Now, here's how it came about. Recently, I was putting together a brand new program called The Body You Deserve. And as I was designing the program, I got to the point of thinking about, okay, let's deal with one of the problems with people trying to lose weight, which is just the sense that they've got to have something now. You know that state where you feel like if you don't have it now, you're going to explode? I don't know if you've ever experienced that or not. Maybe not around food, maybe around something else. And I began to look at the dynamic of how that makes people overeat and try to identify what the cause was, so in one of the days I could really help them create a solution. And as I thought about it, okay, for someone to actually overeat, what has to happen first? First, they got to be triggered. And by the way, isn't this true of any behavior you want to change? Whether it's smoking or drinking, or whether it's getting frustrated or mad or angry or overwhelmed, something triggers us initially. So what kinds of things can trigger us? Well, it can be something internally triggered by us asking ourselves a question or focusing on something internally, or it can be an external cue. It can be something that we see or hear, something someone says, maybe a smell that triggers us. As soon as we're triggered, we go into a state. And when people overeat, I began to ask myself, what is the state they're in when they really overeat? I mean, when they gotta have that food. I realized it was a state of tremendous urgency, that the person felt like they gotta have it right now. And as I began to explore that, I thought, well, what's creating this state of urgency in people? What's making them have to have that food right now? And I began to realize it was a sense of scarcity. Suddenly this person began to feel if they didn't have something right now, they were going to miss out. They were going to be deprived. They weren't going to have what they really wanted most. And as I began to explore this, I said, okay, well, if somebody gets where they feel like they're missing out, human beings will do almost anything to avoid what? Pain. And missing out, being deprived, is major pain for most people in our culture. In fact, scarcity is what drives so many of our desires in this culture. The more scarce some things are, the more we want them. I mean, that's the challenge. When most people want to lose weight, what do? They try and deprive themselves. They say, I can't have this food that makes me feel good. What we really want is just to change the way we feel. And if someone thinks like they can't have that anymore, that just drives them crazy. It's the very same drive, by the way, that made people come across an ocean, risk their lives to come to the New World, to get something called gold. Why do they want this little pretty metal? Why was it in such demand? Because it was scarce. Scarcity drives human beings crazy, whether it be in diamonds or in relationships. Some people, when they really want to be in a relationship with somebody and they don't think it's possible, boy, they really want to be with this person. They find this drive. They'll do anything. They'll take care of that relationship. They make it the priority. But once they're in the relationship, what happens? For some people, the law of familiarity begins to set in. They start to take for granted what's so close to them. Pretty soon, what they wanted is no longer scarce. They're around this person so much that they begin to take them a little bit for granted. So after a while, we'll see this relationship begin to deteriorate. But you know what's interesting, including in a relationship? If suddenly somebody else gets interested in this person they're in a relationship with, very often the person is no longer so familiar. All of a sudden they're a scarce resource again. All of a sudden the person starts paying attention. It's an interesting dynamic that we human beings have around this thing called scarcity. And boy, if there's any place it shows up, it sure does in food. So I was thinking, all right, how do you do this? How do you turn this around? And I can only tell you my own experience. I can give an experience of how scarcity was driving my family for a while. One day, our chef came home with a special treat after dinner. It was these fat-free cookies. And they were supposed to have no sugar. But you know what? Most things like that taste like cardboard. But these things were absolutely incredible. We were so excited after we had these cookies that sure enough, I came back into the kitchen about 30 minutes later to have one of these cookies, and the whole box was gone. Everybody had hit the kitchen and wiped the thing out. Well, you can't imagine what that did to my desire for these cookies. All of a sudden, I wanted them more than anything on earth. And I was real frustrated, so I said, hey, tomorrow, go get a couple of boxes of these things. Sure enough, the next day, she came back in. I walked in there. She'd gotten 2 boxes, and they were already empty by the time I got home. I said, I want to make sure I had some of these cookies. Now I can't have them at all. I said, tomorrow, I tell you what I want you to do. Get 25 boxes of these cookies. I want you to fill up this entire cupboard, because when I come in here, I want to be able to cookie when I want it. So sure enough, the next day I come in, and there are 23 boxes there. 2 are already gone. But I said, I don't care. At least I got 23 boxes here left. And I went in there and had about a half a box of cookies, maybe 3/4 of a box. But the bottom line is when I was done, I felt satisfied, I thought. Sure enough, the next day I came in, and there were still a few boxes gone, but there's still plenty of cookies in there, so I had a few. By the 3rd day, I had maybe 1. By the 4th day, I was like, there are plenty of cookies here. There'll always be here. You know what's fascinating? I wasn't the only one who behaved differently once there were plenty of cookies. I noticed all of a sudden, a month later, there were still 20 boxes of darn cookies sitting in there. In fact, 2 months later, there was mold growing all over these cookies. No one had ever touched them because there were so many of them. They were so available. They were like sick of them. See, scarcity does interesting things to us, and having a sense of abundance also changes the way we respond to things. Now, you say, well, Tony, what has this got to do with this thing called quality quantifiers? Everything. See, what I was searching for at the time was to give people a tool that would help them to get out of that state of urgency, that state where you're crazy, where you got to have it right now or you're going to go nuts. You know the kind of state I'm talking about, right? And as I began to do that, trying to figure out a tool for it, I thought, you know what? We all create this emotion. We create this feeling of urgency, like I got to do it now. I got to have it now. But we feel like it's something outside of ourselves, something outside of us that's triggering us. And that state of urgency doesn't last forever. So I thought, how could I give people a sense that they're in control of this? So in a moment, if you start to feel that urgency, you could wipe it out. So you could lower its intensity. And by the way, if you think of any behavior that's in your life that you want to change, it always starts out the same way. Something triggers you. You go into a state where you feel like you have to go to the 3rd step, take action. And oftentimes when you're in a state of urgency, you don't think things through. You just immediately act upon it, sometimes in an unconscious way. And by the way, every action you take takes you to the 4th step, which is consequences. And the bottom line is a lot of people have consequences in their life they don't like because they consistently take actions that are inappropriate, and they do that because they're in such a lousy state, or because they feel overwhelmed, or they feel like they have no choice, or because they feel overwhelmed, or they feel like they have no choice, or because they feel over. So as I began to look for ways to help people break these patterns and to take control, I thought, well, I need to ponder this a bit. So I took a break and I went over and visited with some friends at their home. And as we're sitting around, I began to describe what I was trying to accomplish. And out of our conversation and my doing a few experiments with their children, I came up with what I first called an urge management tool. And as I expand on it, I'll see you'll understand I created it into something we now call the quality quantifier. Now, what the heck did I do? Well, I just basically took food that was nearby. And again, because the focus I had at that time was how to change our state around food. The quality quantifier that you're about to learn about can show you how to change the feeling you have about anything. But the bottom line is, I looked around at food and there was some banana bread sitting there on the table. And so I began to ask people, where are you on a scale from, let's say, -10, where this is the most disgusting garbage on earth you would never touch in a million years and make you sick to your stomach, to +10, it's the most desirable, outrageous, delicious food. You got to have it right now, no matter what. I said, where are you? And I asked everybody. So what I got them to do is to quantify their desire. Remember this word, quantify. So I asked them, where is it? What's the level of its appeal for you right now? And most people are in the range of +2 to +7. I said, great. And so I said to each person, what would it take to increase your desire for this banana bread? What would you have to do? If somebody, for example, was at +5, I said, okay, what's it going to take for you to get to +7? So I went to Mom in the group and I said, all right, Mom, tell me, what would take it to +7 for you? She said, wouldn't take very much. I said, okay, well, like what? She said, all I'd have to do is thinking about what it would feel like as I was chewing it in my mouth. I love the flavor. I said, what would it take for it to be, let's say, +9? She said, add chocolate to it. I said, oh, no. Okay. I went to her little daughter and I said, where are you about it? She goes, well, I'm a +5. And I said, okay, well, what would it take for you to go to +10 immediately with this? She said, I could never make it +10. Banana bread's not that good. I said, well, if you wanted to increase your desire, if you had to have it, if you really, really wanted it now, what would you have to do to it in your mind? How would you have to think about it? What would you have to imagine or feel? She thought for a little while and she said, well, I know. If I had green beans with it, then it'd be a +10. I was like, green beans? She goes, yeah. And her mom started laughing. She goes, she is the best eater in the house. She's a vegetarian. Then I went to her little brother and he'd gone in the kitchen. He'd grabbed Hanson soda pop while we were talking. So I stopped him and I grabbed the soda pop out of his hand. I said, stop. I said, I need your help. Will you help me out here? I said, how much do you want this soda pop right now? You know, on a scale from -10, you know, it's the most disgusting thing. You never touch it in a million years to +10. You got to have it right now. It's the most incredible soda on earth. Where is it? He said, it's about a 5. And I said, plus or minus? He said, +5. I said, well, make it a 7. You know, make it so you want it even more. He said, I don't know if I can do that. I said, sure you can. Think about it. How would you do that? How would you get yourself to feel that way? And by the way, with each person, I didn't just get them to do this intellectually. I got them to imagine what they said and actually got their emotion to that level of intensity, that level of desire. So I said, get it to 7. He thought for a while and he said, okay. I said, how'd you do it? I said, are you really there? He said, yeah. He said, well, I thought about what it tastes like if it was really cold. And I said, okay, what would it take for it to be at level 8? He said, level 8. He said, gosh. He said, okay, I'm there. I said, how'd you do it? He said, well, I thought about the fact that, you know, I haven't drunk anything in a while and I'm getting kind of thirsty. I said, what would it take to get it to level 10? I mean, well, you had to have it right now. And he said, well, gosh, I really just don't want it that bad. I said, I know, but if you were going to be there, what would you have to imagine? What would you have to think? What would you have to feel? And he thought for a while. And again, I got him to think of this quality of wanting something that bad, wanting something that much. And then I got him to quantify what would have to happen for him to feel those feelings. He thought for a while, and all of a sudden his eyes got really big. He reached out and he said, I got it. And he reached out and grabbed the drink back out of my hand and started yanking it out, trying to open. I said, stop. I mean, I wish I hadn't videotaped. It was so cute. I mean, he wanted it right then and there. He was totally associated. I took it back from him. I said, what are you doing? What happened? What'd you do inside your head? He said, I thought about the fact that it's the last one. I thought, interesting. Scarcity again. Scarcity is where we are when we feel like we got to have it right now. And you know what? With almost every person there, to get them to +10, usually it was this tremendous focus on how delicious it was, but also the fact that there wasn't very much of it. Isn't that interesting? So you might say, Tony, so what's the lesson for this month? Make myself scarce so people find me more valuable? No. But be aware that our fear of loss, that's what scarcity really is, right? The fear of loss tends to drive us. And while I was sitting there, as this began to hit me, I thought, this is really interesting. I can remember a couple of weeks ago, coming to the studio, the night before, I'd been working all night long. I never stopped for dinner. I went to sleep. I got up on very little sleep the next day, went into business meetings, and by the time I got to the studio, it was 6 o'clock, and I had not had anything for almost a day and a half. And I remember on the way to the studio, I started to freak out thinking, I got to have something. And sure enough, I felt like I had to eat almost anything at that point. I just need to get something in there because, boy, if I didn't eat now, I may never eat again. Real logical, huh? But that's how many of us think. The truth of the matter is the food will be there tomorrow, just like those cookies. When we finally had enough of them, we knew they were going to be there forever. They weren't so desirable. We didn't overeat. We didn't have that same urgency. Now you might say, well, Tony, so what are you doing? Teaching me to increase my urgency? Yes. I want you to know how to increase your urgency to, for example, commit yourself to exercise. I want you to know how to increase your urgency for enjoying anything you do. You know, too many of us in life do things and we don't enjoy them. We do things every day. And yet we don't thoroughly enjoy everything about what we're doing. And you know what? Whether we enjoy something or not, whether we're having a peak experience or not, comes down to the fact that we have not decided we're going to have a peak experience, and we have not decided what do we have to do to make it a peak experience. Most of us never set that clear goal. Our goal is to achieve something. but not necessarily to feel the joy along the way. Now you might say, well, where are you going with this? Well, let me finish the urge management and I'll tell you, okay? Let me show you something else that's equally important. Is it important in life for you to be able to lower your urgency, to lower your desire for things that maybe not be so great for you? The answer is obvious, isn't it? So I then turned to each of these same people and I said, okay, wherever you are, I want you to lower the intensity. I want you to get it so you don't like it as much. In fact, I took the little boy with his Hanson soda and I said, okay, make it a 0. He said, I can't. I got to have it. He was still in state, which reminds me, if you really get where you got to have something, the first thing you got to do is break your pattern. Have you ever been in that place where you feel like you really got to have something, you got to have it now, if something distracts you, something gets your attention, and you know what, if you get caught up in something else, you lose the urge, don't you? It doesn't last forever. So I broke his pattern, teased him a little bit, asked him some questions, and finally I said, okay, go to 0. He said, okay, no problem. I said, how did you do it? He said, well, I just thought about the fact I need to get my homework done, and also there's this great program on TV. Ah, interesting. I began to look for patterns. How do we take ourselves from having to have something to changing? One way is to change our focus. Focus on something else. I said, okay, well, now that you're at 0, get yourself where you think about the Hanson's pop again, but you're at -2. I mean, where it's not just neutral. It's like, you don't want it. It just makes you think, this is terrible. I don't want to put this in my body. I don't want this. This wouldn't even taste good. What would it take to get it to -2? He said, oh, I can't do that. These things are too good. You couldn't get it to -2. I said, I know you can't, but if you could, how would you do it? And he thought for a while. I said, come on, you can do it. Sure enough, since I didn't let him off the hook, he came up with a way. And he began to think. I said, okay, are you there? And pretty soon he went, yeah. And you could see his face kind of start to frown a little bit. And I said, what'd you do? He said, well, I thought about it being really warm and kind of like when somebody opens it up and they've left it out and it's kind of flat. I said, oh, that would make it -2 for me too. Might even make it -5 for me. He said, yeah, I don't want that. I said, okay, now take it. So when you look at it and think of it, it's -5. He thought for a little while and he went, okay, I got it. I'm there. And you could see he started to kind of scrunch up his face even more. I said, what'd you do? He said, I added lemon juice. I said, okay. Well, I said, is there another way to do it? He said, well, yeah, I could also add chili peppers. I said, what would it take for it to be -10? He said, if you put green beans in it. I thought, oh, that poor mom. She's trying to please his whole family, right? I said, okay. I said, is there anything else? He said, well, if I thought it would make me sick. I thought, interesting. How does he get to -10? He's got to make it where he sees -10 is so painful. Remember what drives us. What makes us want something? The desire for pleasure or that we think it'll help us to avoid pain. What made somebody have to have it at level 10 because they thought, boy, if I don't have it right now, I'm going to miss out. I'm going to have pain. What makes it -10? If I have this, I'm going to have pain. I'm going to eat something that's going to taste so terrible. Or I'm going to get sick, which means I'm going to lose my freedom or I'm going to lose my health or lose my energy. And by the way, he wasn't the only one who did it this way. Virtually every person I dealt with, and I tried this little game with, this urge management game, every one of them was able to do this. They were able to increase their urgency and they were able to decrease it. Some of them did it by changing their focus. Some of them did it by adding things. Some of them did it by thinking about what it would mean to eat this food. Some people, for example, when they saw the banana cake, in order to drop it down to -2, they stared at it and noticed the different texture. Or they noticed it was brown and thought they don't like brown. Or they squeezed it and saw some of the fat squeezing out of it. They saw the oil on the paper and began to think about that going in their body and clogging them up. And some of them began to think like, well, it could cause me to have a heart attack. Well, you can guess that they went to -10 right away. See, the secret here is, I can describe this to you and you can understand it intellectually, but that's not going to change your life. What's going to change your life is using this simple little tool. What's going to change your life. When I created The Body You Deserve, I guided people through this process, and I'm going to kind of give you a shortened version of that here, just so you have an experience of changing your emotion, because here's what I want you to understand. Why do people do anything? Why do they eat? Why do they drink? Why do they smoke? Why do they yell at somebody they really love? The reason we do anything is just to change the way we feel. And you know what? As an example of food, so often people are eating or overeating. What they're really trying to get is a feeling, a state change, an emotion shift. And what's interesting is it rarely works. It works for the moment, but then it disappears. That's why they got to eat more. Well, this is true of not only eating, but almost anything else. What you have to understand is what you're really searching for is a change in the qualities of sensation, the quality of emotion that you're feeling in a moment. And the only reason you're taking any action, whether it's to buy something or to try something or read or learn, is to make that change, to change how you're feeling, and or to give yourself the ability to do that in the future. But again, let me tell you the secret. If we don't have a target for what our desire is, if we don't consciously decide how we want to feel in a given situation, then we leave ourselves open to be triggered by whatever's happening in the moment, by the environment, by the smells that may be nearby, by what people say. In other words, if we don't direct our experience, if we don't have a very, very clear target and have a set of rules about what it takes to know we've hit that target, then we might be winning and feel like we're losing simply because we're not keeping score. I've said that so many times in these tapes with you, but there hasn't been a tool to actualize it. See, let me complete the metaphor with food, and then I think I can broaden it, because I know you probably keep hearing, well, what is a quality quantifier? The scale? Well, hang in there with me. We'll get to it. Hang on. Let's complete the idea around food, because I think you could probably use it in this context. At that point, it was still an urge management tool. It was, here's how you decide to change your emotional state. First, prove to yourself you can change your emotion, that you can go from totally wanting something to hating it in a few moments. And you know what's interesting, by the way? When you do this, when you go up to plus 10 and you give yourself permission to increase your desire, that's really good. It allows your brain to know, hey, that's not so bad. I can do that, and I'm in control of it. And you start noticing how you increase your desire. Again, you may discover the way you increase your desire is to think about things in terms of scarcity. Or you may determine that the way you do it is by focusing in depth about how great something's going to be and imagining it's a taste or what it's going to feel like. Or you may discover that the way you increase your desire is to add things to the experience. Noticing your pattern of increasing desire, you can take that same understanding and increase your desire to exercise by all of a sudden doing something else while you're exercising, maybe listening to music, or by changing your focus and imagining how you're going to feel at the end. In other words, once you discover the pattern of how to increase your desires, you can even apply it to things that you once thought were mundane, like making your phone calls or doing your paperwork. And that's when we're getting into quality quantifier. But also, are there certain things you shouldn't do, certain distractions you shouldn't get involved in? It might be useful for you to find out what is the pattern that you use to lower your desire to do something. Is it to distract yourself? Is that how you do it with food? Is it to get focused into something else? Is it to imagine the negative consequences of something? Is it to add something else to think like, oh, it's bad enough I got to make these calls, but I got to talk to Mary Sue too? Oh my gosh, now I feel overwhelmed. Now I'm at -5. Are you starting to follow where I'm taking you? See, the key to making long-term change is to understand our patterns and then to utilize those patterns rather than make them wrong. To interrupt the patterns that don't work and to utilize the patterns that do. And the truth of the matter is, there are places in our life where we must increase our level of desire, and there are places in our life where we want to lower it. Beginning to become aware of how we do these things gives us an incredible amount of freedom because it puts us in control. Incredible. Before I explain how to do this in any area of your life, let's do this simplistic scaling process, if you want to call it that. Let's do it with a piece of food. Let's have you go get a piece of food that you really like a lot and put it in front of you and actually practice this. Let's start to use it. But by the way, get a piece of food that you really want a lot, but don't get something you want so bad that you eat it before you turn the tape back on, please. If you're in your car, pull over to a kind of place that you would normally eat something you know is not so good for you. That's right. One of those, you know it's not good for you if you can drive through it. That's usually the first clue, okay? So just pull over and go to one of those places and grab some of that food you normally would, really, really want a lot, but you know is not so good for you, so I can show you how to make some changes. Stop the tape right now till you get the food in front of you, because I want to make sure you do this. You don't just listen about it. Here we go. Okay, are you ready? Got the food in front of you? Listen, if you're still just listening to me and you didn't get any food, pull over and go get some darn food. Come on. You don't want to listen passively. Then you'll have an intellectual understanding. I want you to feel this in your body because it's going to give you a sense of control like you've never had before. With the food in front of you, let's do this. What I want you to ask yourself is, on a scale from -10 again, this is the most disgusting, filthy, terrible, horrible, cancer-causing, chemical-filled thing you would never even dream of having in a billion years, to +10, the most exciting, delicious, desirable, wonderful, ecstatic food on earth that you must have right now. 0 being neutral. Where are you? Just decide right now. Decide right now, what is the quality of your desire? And if you were to quantify it with a number, where is it? You say, well, where is it? Is it level 2 or 3? 4 or 5, 6 or 7? I'd be willing to bet that your level of desire for this is somewhere in the range of 3 to 7, maybe 8 on the outside. Now, where are you? And wherever you are, let's do it. Let's increase the amount of desire you have for this. You go, Tony, I don't want to do that. I'm already good at that. Well, let's see how you do it. Just stop the tape and imagine, what would it take for me to want this even more? If I was at level 5, at level 7, what would it take? What would I have to think about? What would I have to focus on? What would I have to feel? What would I have to imagine smelling? What would I have to add to it? What would I need to do? Stop the tape right now until you've got that done. Okay, so now you've gone up. Let's say you're at level 7 as an example. What did you do to get here? Again, notice the pattern and think. Is there any other place in your life where you have a hard time getting pumped up to do something, or you have a hard time getting yourself motivated to do something, where you could use a similar pattern to make it more enjoyable? Interesting. Now let's ratchet it up 2 more. If you're at 7, take it to 9. Now if we add 2 more and that puts you over 10, well then use 10 as your number. And what I want you to do right now, again, is stop the tape and do whatever it takes so that you feel, well, you have to have it. You got to have it right now. Don't eat it just yet. I know if you get yourself really to 10, literally the urgency may be at the level to absolutely grab it. But just wait until you turn the tape back on and I give you the next instruction. So stop the tape and get yourself up at least 2 more numbers. Okay, welcome back again. So again, the obvious question, what did you do? What brought you from 7 to 9 or whatever number you were? What allowed you to increase your level of desire? What was the pattern? What'd you do inside your head? What'd you think about? What'd you feel? What'd you ask yourself? What'd you focus on? How did you focus? Did you make the image really bright and colorful? Did you bring it close to you? Did you imagine being with somebody else and having a peak experience? Did you imagine it was the last one? Did you imagine if you didn't have this one now, there wouldn't be any left over? Did you imagine this was your last chance? What did you do? Begin to notice the pattern. And lastly, if you're not already there, put yourself at level 10 of desire. Stop the tape until you're there and you really absolutely want it right now. Okay, so I assume you figured out the pattern in this one already. You don't need me to guide you through that. So let's do the following. Take yourself from plus 10 in your level of desire and take it down right now to 2, plus 2. What would you have to do? And by the way, if you're so overwhelmed at level 10, just break your pattern. Take a deep breath in, focus on something else, forget about this food for a second, turn on the music, think of something you did when you were 5 years old. I don't care, anything to break the pattern. Think of a joke you once heard, turn up my voice so I'm a little bit louder, right? Do something to break your pattern, okay? And then bring yourself now down to level 2, plus 2 on a scale from minus 10 to plus 10 in your desire. And as you do that, think about what would take you there to just plus 2. Feel how you'd be feeling if you're at plus 2. Put yourself there. Imagine using the technique you've come up with. And when you get to plus 2, the obvious question is, what did you do? What did you get yourself to do to go from wanting it that bad to having mild desire for it? Yeah, that'd be pretty good. What did you do? What did you do to lower the intensity? And you did it drastically. Now that you're there, go to 0. What would put you at 0? What do you have to do to have 0 desire for it? So it's neutral. It's not like you want it, you don't not want it. Just, it's not important. What'd you think about? What'd you ask yourself? What are you doing right now to get it to 0? Actually do this. Don't just listen. I want you to feel that you can really pull this off, that you can go from total desire down to 0. Now, by the way, sometimes it takes people a lot of time to do this. If that's true, please stop the tape. It doesn't matter how hard it is to do initially. Once you've done it and you know how you've done it, you'll be able to do in a few seconds what you found impossible to do before, which is to change your level of desire in a heartbeat. Now that you're at 0, notice what you did again, and then take yourself down to minus 2. That's it. Minus 2. What would you have to do to make it minus 2? And if you start thinking to yourself, oh, I could never do that. I could never get it where I don't want it. Well, if you could, how would you do it? Create the possibility. Dig around. There must be a way. Commit yourself to finding a way to get it to minus 2. Now, what'd you do to get to minus 2? Did you start imagining this having some negative side effect? Did you imagine this particular food in a way that made it smell differently or made it look differently? Did you focus on some element of the food where like grease was, or it was unattractive looking if you really paid attention to it? Did you think about, what it might do to keep you from achieving some goals you had? What'd you do to make it minus 2? And notice if there's a pattern here that you might be able to use in some other area. Maybe it's being fearful, being angry, being overwhelmed, or snapping at somebody. Is there a way you could use the same pattern to make those behaviors totally unacceptable to you? Now move it down to minus 5. Go ahead. And if you need to stop the tape, do so. Get it down to minus 5. What would it take for you to just be so disgusted by this that it'd be at minus 5 on a scale from minus 10 to plus 10? 0 is neutral. Minus 5 is you absolutely can't stand this. You would never do it in a million years. Again, what are you doing to get there? Stop the tape until you're there. Fabulous. So what did you do? Again, this can sound redundant. I keep asking the same darn question, but we need to know. And is there a pattern? How did you increase your aversion for this food? How did you make it even more distasteful? How did you make the idea of it even be this negative where you don't even want it? Something that was plus 10 just a little bit ago. Continue with this process. Go to 7 and eventually get yourself to minus 10. And again, stop this tape until you're absolutely minus 10 where you couldn't even imagine putting in your body in a million years. It was just absolutely the most horrible thing you could possibly imagine. What would you have to add to it? What would you have to imagine? What would you have to believe about this food? And what it would mean to consume this food for you to be having it at minus 10. And again, this may be such a foreign idea. It's very difficult at first to get to, but work at it. The ability to get yourself there, everyone has it. Do it right now and turn the tape back on once you've gotten to minus 10. All right, you've done it. You're at minus 10. That's great. And this is something you used to absolutely have to have. Used to was like about 2 minutes ago, right? Now you're at minus 10. How did you accomplish that? My guess is that you either added something to it that would smell so bad or think so bad, or the mixture of the two is so horrible. Like a lady who liked chocolate, then she took clam juice and mixed it in there in her mind. Just the thought of that process did it to her. One woman, for example, thought about the fact that if she ate a particular food, her husband wouldn't get to have it. And for her, that would mean not loving him. It would be like the loss of love. People do weird things to this. Lots of people make it so they think of it like a poison, or they think it's going to cause them to clog their system with fat or develop a heart attack or a stroke. If somebody starts to think that this is something that is poisonous, whether there's a loss of health, a loss of freedom, a loss of energy, a loss of love, total loss of enjoyment, such physical distaste that it just made them want to vomit, anything like that, of course, people do at minus 10. And there are lots of ways to get there. Now, here's the key. You can go to any level of desire you want with this food now. Just right now, without even putting a desire, just think about the food and see where you go. Having gone to minus 10 and plus 10, what most people do, most people can find themselves in a positive range of 2 to 5 usually, but not much higher than that. Even if they are higher, they know they can go down immediately. If you've actually done it, and I sure hope you have, then you've experienced how quickly we can change the quality of our experience just by making a decision at what level of quality we want to have. That seems technical in language, but let me clarify again. What you did is you set a target of quality of feeling, a quality of sensations you wanted. And then you quantified. Now, what does the word quantify mean? Well, part of the definition of quantifying is to measure something, to make explicit what it would take to do there. So you quantified. You said, okay, I want to have a level 7 experience. You gave it a numerical rating. And that level 7 represented a certain amount of quality of feeling you wanted to have about that food, right? Whether that feeling was something of being turned off to it or being turned on. But also part of quantifying or measuring is making explicit what would you have to do for you to feel this way. That's what a quality quantifier is. Now, again, this sounds technical. You don't have to understand the exact words. Just give it a label, and let's discover what I'm really talking about by using it in another context. Here's what happened. After I started doing this with people, it was magical. First of all, I loved it. I started out just calling it my urge management tool. Hey, I can change my urges in a minute. Give me a piece of food. It was fun. Let me run it at the flagpole of desire. Let me run it down into the dirt. I don't want it at all. It felt so good to be totally in control and to show other people how to do it. And it was so interesting. At every dinner I was at, I was showing people how to do this, and people would kind of go into trance and go, wow, that's really great. I can feel the difference in my body right here and now. So then I got so excited about it, I said, okay, how do I generalize this? Is there another area besides food where I can use this urge management tool? Maybe it's more than just urge management. So I thought, well, I'm using this scaling system. What is it about that works? And then I got it. And it's like the bulbs flashing off of my head. Listen, the number one way to increase the quality of your life is to raise your standards. See, that's how life changes. Standards. See, that's how life changes. If you've listened to me before, you know I've talked many times about the 3 things that change your life long term, not just for the moment. Number 1 is raise your standards. Raise what you demand from yourself. Raise what is a must for you. None of us get our shoulds. We should lose weight. We shouldn't eat certain things. We should be happier. We should have more fun. We don't really do it. We just should all over ourselves, right? But we always get what we must have. So what this great thing about this tool is, we're deciding. We're flat deciding this is what I must experience. I must be at level 5, or I must be at level 10, or I must be at minus 5 around this idea or concept or food. And then what we're saying is what has to happen for me to get there? And you know what? This employs two tools: raising your standards, getting very specific about what you want, and then asking the right questions. And asking, you shall what? Receive. I began to realize this tool, by setting a target and then asking myself what has to happen for me to be there, is causing me to raise my standards, and it's causing me to ask the questions that give me the answers I need to actually experience what I want. In other words, you could have always hated this food. You could have always loved this food at whatever level you want. But unless you take conscious control, you end up with whatever the world gives you. In essence, what we're doing is simply this. Realize, to succeed at anything in life, you got to have a target. If you're not clear on what your target is, you're going to find yourself being pushed around by whatever happens in the environment. You're going to end up with whatever the environment pushes you towards. So we're deciding on the quality of experience we're committed to. And then we're saying, what's it take to get there? I call that a quality quantifier. It's quantifying the level of quality that you want for some experience in your life, right? And then figuring out what's it going to take to make that happen. If you want to achieve mastery in anything, you've got to know precisely what you want and what must happen for you to achieve it. I mean, that's simple, right? So if you're not getting what you want from a situation, that is, you're achieving but you still don't feel the joy, or you're with somebody in a relationship and you don't feel the passion you want, or you had some food and it doesn't taste that good, or you went out to go play some sport and at the end you don't feel happy about it. If you're not getting what you want from a situation, it's not because you can't have it. It's because you haven't used a quality quantifier. You haven't asked yourself, number one, what is the quality of experience that I want to have in this situation? On a scale from 0 to 10, what do I want to experience? And how would I describe that emotionally? I want this to be a level 10 experience. What's that like? And then secondly, what has to happen in order for me to feel this way? What conditions must I create in myself and in my environment to have this be a level 10 experience, if that's what you're pursuing or whatever you're pursuing? I don't know about you, but I'm not willing to settle for less than level 10 in most experiences of my life. Anything that matters, whether it's producing a seminar or making love or being with your kids, I mean, what's it going to take for it to be level 10? What conditions you got to create in yourself and other people? And you've got to make sure to have a well-formed quality quantifier for this to be something that really works. Let me give you a little caveat. Make sure a well-formed quality quantifier is always based on conditions that you can control. See, I may not be able to control. If I say, for me to have a level 10 experience tomorrow, the temperature has to be exactly 78 degrees. Well, then I'm in deep stuff because I can't control that. Or I could say, for me to have a level 10 experience tomorrow, I have to make sure that throughout the day I stop, pause, and think about what I'm really grateful for. Or I have to notice the progress we've already made on this business project. Or I have to connect with my kids and tell them I love them. These are things I can control. Therefore, I know that I'm going to have that level of experience tomorrow. Are you following me? I know this may sound esoteric at first, but once you do it a few times, it's not. Let me give you a couple examples rather than just technical words, and I think you'll be able to follow what I'm saying. One of the first places I began to use this tool was when I got to Mastery. Because when I got to Mastery, for me, traditionally, the Mastery program is absolutely the finest thing I do on earth. Best program I do. I get to be with people for 9 days and give them every ounce of me and get to know them personally. But also, I found in the past it was stressful. When it was called certification, it was 14 days. It's like I loved it when it was over, and then I got to sit down and enjoy it. And I thought, wait a second. This time, I'm going to decide to not only make sure everybody else has a level 20 experience, which is the standard I hold myself to. I try to figure out how to drive people crazy with joy and passion, excitement, give them experience they'll never forget for the rest of their life. And it works. But I realized I don't set that standard for myself until it's over. It's like I don't matter till it's over. When it's over, I get to have my level 20 experience looking back at what I've created for everybody. And it's true, I enjoyed it along the way, but there was usually a lot of stress. So I said, you know what? I need to set a higher standard. I need to raise my standard by using this quality quantifier. So I asked myself, what would it take for me to have a level 10 experience while I'm working so hard to make sure everyone else gets to have their level 10 or 20 experience? I thought, you know what? I've never asked that question before. I've never set a standard for the amount of enjoyment, the quality of enjoyment I'm going to get from this experience while it's happening. And so I've enjoyed it, but there have been ups and downs while I was making sure everyone else was having the experience they came for. So I said, okay, if I'm going to have a level 10 experience throughout the entire time, what conditions would I have to create in myself and other people? What would I have to believe? What would I have to organize? What would I have to do that I can control? And you know what? I came up with a whole list of things. I need a staff member who at late at night I can sit down and do my download to of all the key ideas and have them type it all out for me and give it back to me. So I'm not sitting there trying to read my scribble. I need to make sure that I get there 3 days early and actually have some time to breathe when I get to the resort instead of landing and immediately I'm working. I need to bring my youngest son and have him be part of it with the rest of us so that I get to spend some quality time with him right before I go into it so I'm not missing him in the middle of the program. And I came up with this whole list of things I could control that immediately increased the quality of the experience for me. And I love mastery more than I ever have. I produced the level 20 of experience for everybody else, but I also produced it for myself. And it was phenomenal. And I did it in all kinds of little ways, and some of which I'm using to this day. One of them I did, for example, was around running. One morning as we got there early, 3 days early, I got a chance to go check out the course where many of us were going to run. And I took a good friend of mine and a business associate, Michael Hutchinson. And I said, Mike, let's go for this run. So we went on this run. It was in the middle of the day. It was hot. It was sunny. It was not where we're normally going to run. But we said, hey, let's do it. It's noon. It's the worst conditions possible. Let's see what it's like. And instead of setting a standard and deciding in advance what kind of experience we were going to have, we just ran unconsciously. What do I mean? We didn't have a standard. We just ran and we're going to let the environment give us whatever experience showed up. That's the way I'd always run in the past. And sure enough, I got the result I've always gotten. At the end, it was a pretty good run. I turned to my buddy Mike, his nickname's Hutch, and I said, Hutch, what kind of experience did you have there? On a scale from -10 to +10, what was that run for you? And it was interesting. I told him the whole story, explained it to him. He said, well, I don't know, probably a level 7. I said, it was almost identical for me. I'd say a 7 too, even before he said it. I said, what would it have taken for that to have been a level 8 experience for us? He thought for a minute and he said, well, gosh, I don't know. I said, well, think about it. He said, well, if we were running in unison, he said, there were times when we were going at different paces and we weren't next to each other at various times. And he said, that felt disconnected. It'd be really great. It'd be more like a team thing if we were running together. I said, well, that's great. What would it take to be level 9? He said, well, if we were running like full out, all the way out, intense. I said, what would it be to level 10? He said, if we were running as hard as we could possibly run and we were just sweating like crazy and when we were done, we could barely even breathe. And it was so funny. I started laughing. I said, you know what's interesting? I said, you know what? You've been telling me about how when you run sometimes you injure yourself and how that keeps you from running because you don't get a level 10 experience when you're in pain. And yet what's required for you, your rules for having a level 10 experience is you got to have pain. You got to have pain to be at level 10. And it was like such an aha. He went, wow. He said, no wonder I'm always injuring myself. I have to get to that level for me to feel like I'm having a peak experience. He said, but I don't know any other way to really get that feeling. I said, that's not true. If there's anything I've learned, there's lots of ways to get to level 10 in our experience. I said, if you were going to still be at level 10 and it wasn't going to be painful, what would we do? He said, wow, I never asked that question before. I said, that's why you never come up with the answer before. I said, think about it. He said, well, if we were running really strong in unison, and maybe if we had some music while we're running, or maybe if we were all running, if we did like a cadence together or something. He said, that'd make me laugh. That'd be great. And he said, also, if we were running and I was really just enjoying the beauty and thinking about how lucky I am to be alive. I said, are those things you could do right now? He said, yeah. I said, then let's do that tomorrow. And you know what? We did, and both of us agreed we had a level 10 experience. Why? Number one, we decided in advance what kind of experience we're going to have. We quantified it, and we just determined the exact conditions that we would create, that we could control, that would give us that experience. Isn't that simple? I know it sounds like a lot, but it's so simple and it changes your life immediately. You're not going to have a level 10 experience of joy in your life unless you decide to. Or then you got to hope that the environment creates a level 10. Well, that's random. You're going to have level 6 experiences, 5, 4, 3, or maybe some -5s if you don't decide how you're going to feel in advance and if you don't make sure that you're in control of the game. By the way, when I went to Mastery, this tool was invaluable. We had lots of people who had never run before in their lives, and they wanted to go exercise. Well, one man said, I can't do it. So I asked him, where are you on a scale from -10 to +10? Explain the theory to him. He said, I'm at -7. I said, why? He said, well, when I think about doing it, I think I might have a heart attack. Why? Well, years ago when I was exercising, he said, I overdid it, and I started feeling these pains in my heart. And I said, well, have you been to a doctor? He said, yeah. He says, I'm fine now. He said, I was really overweight back then, all kinds of problems, but I can't run. It'll mean that same thing to me. I'll die. Well, I'm sure that's pretty close to a -10 experience for most people. I said, well, listen, the doctor here checked you out before he came here, right? He said, yeah. And he said you could run, yeah. I said, well, you're different than you were before. We're not having you run full out crazy like that. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, if your doctor says it's okay and you really wanted this to be a +10 experience, how would that happen? I said, don't go to +10. That's too big a jump. What would it take to take it from -7 to at least a +4 experience? And he thought about it, and he came up with some things. And I said, then +7. And gradually, we got him to +10. He went out the next day, and he came in, and a couple people asked him, he said, what kind of experience you have? He said, +13. He said, I surpassed what I want to do. I love this. Most fun I've ever had in my life, because I figured out what it would take to win the game before I started. Doesn't that make sense? We all deserve to do that. Makes sense. We all deserve to do that. And I want to point out something else that's really important here. And that is, it's important not only you have a level 10 experience, but the people you work with, ideally, so that you don't just feel really good and everybody else around you is bummed out. So I'll give you an example. When we went to Mastery, we're doing it at the Hyatt Waikoloa, $750 million resort on the Big Island of Hawaii. Phenomenal place. We've been there twice before, and the hotel really loves us. We bring them a lot of business, but also our people really take good care of them and vice versa. So we've enjoyed being there. But one of the things that makes us successful is we always do a pre-convention meeting where we bring in all the top executives from the Hyatt, all the managers, and we sit down and try to describe to them, okay, this is what we're going to do this year. This is who's going to be here. These are what are some of their special needs and desires are. How can we work together? What are some of the synergies we can create? And it's helped a lot. But you know what's interesting? There have always been a few people, anytime you get this many involved, who have expectations that can't be met. In other words, what it's going to take for us to have a level 10 experience might be different than what they need for a level 10 experience. How do you work that out? Well, what I did is I explained this whole idea of quality quantifiers. And I explained to them how I used it with urge management with food and had them kind of play with it a little bit with their coffee in front of them. And it really worked. And they got real excited about it. So I said, now let's try it this way. Right now, you know we're coming in. We're bringing in 1,000 people from all over the world. We've been here before. Where are you guys on a scale from -10 to +10 about us being here? I said, as if you're actually going to tell me the truth. I said, but seriously, tell me. And I made them laugh a little bit. I said, let's go around the room. And I went to each manager, each executive. And the room was filled with about, 60, 70, 75 people. So we went around the room and I said, where are you? Tell us your name. Tell us what your job function is and tell us where you are. A bunch of people started saying, well, I'm at 10. We're at 10 plus. We're at 20 with you guys. Some of them were sincere. Some weren't quite as congruent. So I said, stop. I said, listen, I don't mind you guys being at -5 about us being here because I want to know that now so I can figure out what does it take for us to have a 10 experience for you. Because I don't want you just to meet our needs. I want this to be mutual. So one person I knew we were going to have a challenge with is we got to the chef. And the poor chef, whenever we come to a seminar, our timelines tend to change drastically during the midst of the seminar because we might be getting hot onto a topic or some interruption happens or we decide to do something spontaneously and it screws up the chef's entire schedule and he's trying to cook for 1,000 people. So I got to him and I smiled and I said, where are you on a scale from -10 to +10? He said, honestly, and I forget what number he said, but it was something like a 3. And I said, well, what's it going to take for you to be at a +10? He said, for all the meals to start exactly at the time we agreed to initially. Now, the problem with that is that doesn't allow me to create a +10 for somebody in the environment because part of what makes it powerful is the spontaneity that we create inside the seminar. So I said, you know what? I said, I want you to have a +10 experience. And I said, I need you to understand, and I explained to him why we need that spontaneity. I said, as long as that's what it's going to take for you to have a +10 experience, you're going to be unhappy. You're going to have a +3 or a -3 experience for the way you're talking. So I said, I want to support you, honestly. How could we have flexibility in the schedule where we might change the time within an hour or two and still have it be a +10 experience for you? Because I'm committed, if there's anything within my control that I can do to help you to do that. He said, well, the truth is, now that I think about it, if everybody just loved the food, it'd be a +10 experience for me. He said, if the majority of people really loved it, and I got to hear that they really loved it, and I got to see that feedback. He said, if we could find a way to keep things warm so they didn't cool off or the quality of the food didn't go down. I said, well, how could we do that? And we came up with a series of strategies. One of the things that made me most happy out of the whole training was not only did we give the level 10 experience to the people who came to the seminar, but I got to see the chef on the last day just as I was leaving. And he came up and gave me this big hug. And he said, level 10 and above, with a big smile. I said, really? He said, absolutely. He said, it really worked. See, I think it's really important in life that we don't just think of how do we get a level 10 experience out of something, but we got to remember the importance of synergy. We've got to understand that how other people feel is important too. If you can't make yourself have a level 10 experience, you sure as heck can't help somebody else. And you can't be responsible for everybody else, but you can sure help. So this tool that I'm sharing with you, I hope you'll use it not just on yourself, but maybe you can help somebody else. Maybe you can find somebody who's having a tough experience, say, hey, what would it take for this to be level 10? And their first reaction might be nothing. Or, well, everything has to be perfect. Say, well, what if it wasn't perfect? There's another way to get to level 10. How would you do it? Or at least a 9 or an 8, or just increase them from where they are. It's so valuable to ask somebody, where are you on a scale from 0 to 10? Where are you really right now? And have them tell you the truth. I'm at a 4. Really? Well, what would it take to be at a 6? That's not too big a jump. Think in terms of how to use this tool for those you care about, for those you do business with, for those people you're surrounded with. And I got to tell you something. The best way to really use a tool is to teach it. You know, if you go out and start sharing this with other people, you're more likely to apply it. So I encourage you to do this. And know that this doesn't just work in areas like business. It doesn't just work with your running. It works with your intimacy. There was a woman at the seminar who was really upset because she says she never feels intimate or even slightly attracted to her husband. I said, on a scale from -10 to +10, where are you in your level of attraction, of wanting to be intimate, of wanting to make love to him? And she said, most of the time, -2. I said, well, has there ever been a time you'd have been above that? She said, the highest I've probably ever been with him is +2. I thought, I'm sure glad he's not here to hear this. But I said, okay, well, can you give me any idea why you've never had a +2? She goes, oh, I don't know. I said, well, have you ever felt more than +2 towards a woman in terms of attraction? And she said, no. I said, okay, that's good. Well, how about, let's do this. Maybe you've had no experience being at higher than +2, but you know what? I bet in the back of your brain, you know how to be at a higher level. If you would just create the possibility. I said, if you were totally committed to having a +6 experience, where you felt that level of attraction, not +10, not +8, just +6, what would you have to do? What would you have to believe? What would you have to think about? What conditions would you have to create in yourself or in the environment? She said, well, I'd have to stop being so uptight about it being an act. I said, interesting. What else? Well, I'd have to start realizing that this is really an expression of real love. I said, I said, what else would you have to do? She said, well, I'd probably have to make it feel more romantic. Because, all the men I've ever been with, it's never been really romantic. She said, maybe if we create an environment like a warm bath with candles. I said, where would that put it? She goes, gosh, that alone would put it at level 6, maybe 7. And then she started to get excited. You know why? She started asking a new quality of question. A new quality of question gives you a new answer. And gradually we got her up to +10. At the break, she ran out and came back and reported. She called up her husband and said, guess what? Hope you're prepared for me. I'm going to be home in a few days, and I don't know if I can last that long. You might have to come out here. She said, I got some surprises for you. See, we've got the answers if we just set a high enough standard. If we just start measuring where we are and being honest with ourselves and then committing to go another level and believing and knowing there's an answer that can take us there. It can work in any area of your life. You might say, well, Tony, this sounds great, but let's say I want to have a level 10 experience of doing my taxes. How in the heck could I do that? I'm not going to come up with ways to do that. Great. Start with where you are. The key always is to do 3 things. I've talked about these so many times. Number 1, see it how it is. Okay? See how it really is. Where are you right now? Don't kid yourself. See, I used to just, I'm really in great shape. No. Where am I really? It's good to know where you are to start with. Quantify it. Give it a number. Scale from -10 to +10. Where are you about doing your taxes? I'm a -2. Great. Now, don't try to jump to level 10. By the way, you may not even be committed to having a level 10 experience doing your taxes. Maybe it'd be great if you had a level 7 experience of doing your taxes, right? Or maybe even an 8. So then ask yourself, okay, what am I committed to having? And then graduate it. Say, okay, if I was going to go from -10 to at least neutral, what would I have to believe? What would I have to do? What environment, what conditions would I have to create inside myself? In terms of my beliefs, what I'd be saying to myself, what I'd be focused on, how I'd be sitting, where I'd be doing it. Would I need to get somebody to help me? What would I have to believe about this process? What would I have to do in the environment itself so I would enjoy it? Then say, okay, what would it take to be at +2? And you know what you just got to understand, what you got to trust is I can talk to you about this all day long. I can keep giving example after example, but the truth is the way you're going to know this works is by doing it. So if you did the exercise earlier, it worked with changing your level of desire. You can do this in any environment. Ask and you shall receive. If you set the standard and ask the question, you'll get the answer. But demand the answer. Don't give up too soon. That's the key here. By the way, you've been doing this throughout your life. You just haven't been doing it consciously. Again, it's just like questions. It's just like transformational vocabulary. There have been times in your life when you've had a great experience. You just didn't ask yourself what made it so great. Here's something I normally hate, and one time I enjoyed it. I went out and exercised, and I turned music on. Wow! I learned something. Turning music on makes it better. Well, guess what? You now have another tool. You have a way to increase the quality of your experience. While you're running, you get to listen to this music. That's pretty simple. If you start thinking in terms of how do I increase the quality of my life and measuring it, the more you measure something, the more conscious you are about it, the better it gets. And by measuring it more often, you're raising your standards and you're making having a quality experience not a should, but a must. That's so valuable. But you know what's most important out of this? Is for you to realize that no matter what you're partaking in life, what experience you're taking part in, even those things you once thought were horrible, you can change the quality of your experience. You can't always change what you have to do, right? You still got to do your taxes. You still got to make the calls, right? You still got to sometimes spend time with somebody that used to annoy you, and you can just go do that and not enjoy yourself like most people in life, or you can have a greater quality of life by deciding that in this situation, I'm going to have X experience, I'm going to level 10 experience, whatever it is, and in order to do that, I got to get curious about this person. And in order to do this, I'm going to do my paperwork in my jacuzzi. And in order to do this, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Are you following me here? It's so important to know that no matter what you do, if you're picking up trash, you can enjoy it. Because a lot of life requires we do things maybe we're not so thrilled about initially. But we can still have that joy. And I think part of that belief for me comes out of a reference experience I had. I wasn't doing it consciously. Many years ago, I had some partners in a business, and they got very involved with a particular philosophy. And this philosophy involved a guru that they were following. Well, I was real turned off by this, to say the least. And I was even more turned off when my partners, who were doing seminars with me at the time, started putting some of this Eastern philosophy into our seminars. So I was a little concerned. Every time they go off and go and do one of these retreats, quote unquote, they came back, in my opinion, in those days, more screwed up. So I was real concerned when they said they were going to go to India. So to protect my interests, I decided to fly with them so I could keep an eye on them, make sure they didn't lose it and go off into guru land. Well, long story short, we get to India, unbelievable flight. We go through Bombay, one of the dirtiest cities on earth, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And then we go out all these hours and hours and hours to this little village where they have this ashram. I immediately find housing outside the ashram. And sure enough, though, every morning I got to go have breakfast. So I go over to the ashram to have my breakfast. And I'm avoiding being around because I don't want to be in this environment. And I also know that there's this thing that everybody's supposed to do at the ashram called seva, which means work for the guru. Basically, it means work for free. I figured seva means you save a lot of money by having a lot of people do the seva stuff, right? So sure enough, I'm hiding out. And one morning I'm out there for breakfast, and one of the monks spots me and says, come here. He said, I've not noticed you before. He said, I haven't seen you at seva. I said, that's because I haven't been there. And he said, well, you got to do seva if you're going to stay in the housing. I said, I'm not part of this thing. He said, even though you're paying is not enough. You have to give some time each day where you work and you give back to the ashram. It's a communal environment. I'm like, oh, well, all right, what do I do? He said, well, report to the seva office and they'll give you an assignment. So I'm thinking, oh man, what am I doing here? What have I got myself into? So I get out of the office. I come up there and he looks at me and says, big, strong man. Oh, how big are you? I'm 6'7". Great. Phenomenal. We've got just the job for you. Here it is. Moving furniture. I'm like, moving furniture? Yeah, just 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day? I got a bad back. He said, really? I said, yeah, I don't think I could do that 4 hours a day. No, for 2 weeks while we're here? No, I don't think so. He looked around and he said, well, I'll see what else we got. And while he's searching around, I should give you a little insight into something. In my life, there are a few things that I experienced as being totally painful. One was growing up as a kid. There's one activity I could not stand. It was never a level 10 experience. It wasn't a level 7 experience. It wasn't a 5. It wasn't a 0. It was like a -8, and I got to do it daily. It's washing the dishes. I remember growing up swearing that someday I'm not going to do this. Because you know what? It took up all my time and my energy, and it's like I didn't even want us to have certain meals because they were harder to clean. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I said, someday I'm going to become so successful that I will never have to do dishes, and neither will anyone in my family. That was before dishwashers really came about, I guess. But the bottom line is, the man comes back and says, you can't do this furniture moving, huh? Well, there's only one other job. Take a wild guess what he gave me? Dishwashing for 4 hours a day. I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And I couldn't come up with any excuse not to wash dishes. Now, it wasn't just dishwashing. It was washing for this whole darn ashram. I go out there and they show me this line. I show my little ticket, what my seva is. I'm thinking the whole time, I'm saving them a lot of money here. All right, what are we going to do? And so sure enough, I come around the corner and I say, this is what you're going to do. You're going to wash here. I said, in here? I had to take off my shoes and step into this area where all the dishwater was dripping down. They had all this yogurt and dairy products and stuff that I can't stand anyway that was mixed into the floor, and I got to stand in this and wash these filthy, stinky dishes. Hundreds and hundreds of them for hours. I was so mad I couldn't see straight. I'm sitting here scrubbing the dish, and I was like taking 20 minutes each dish, just cursing in my head and thinking, what am I doing here? I'm not come all the way to India. I'm stuck here. These low ceilings keep smacking me in the head, and there's lizards, and it's dirty, and it's ugly, and I'm washing dishes? I was just about to have it. And I went on and on like this for a good hour, maybe hour and a half, before finally my brain just got tired of feeling so rotten. So I thought, well, if I'm here and I'm stuck doing this thing and I've been doing this for hours, I can't do this for 2 more weeks like this. I got to find some way to enjoy myself. So I thought, well, what do I love in life? I love being the best at whatever I do. So I didn't say to myself, okay, Tony, use a quality quantifier. Ask yourself, on a scale from -10 to +10, where are you committed to being? Oh, I'm committed to being at +10. Okay, what conditions might you create within yourself and the environment in order to have this be a +10 experience, and then do it now? I didn't do all that. I just was in desperate need. So I just went, what do I do to enjoy myself? So I said, all right, what I'm going to do here is real simple. I'm going to enjoy myself by being the best darn dishwasher you ever did see. So all of a sudden I started speeding up and washing them really great, really great. And the guys next to me were going slow. I said, come on, guys, come on, let's do this. We got to make this the best dishwashing experience ever. And I went on and on and on for hours, and I started laughing and teasing and speeding the group up and having fun and being playful. I even stepped down on the yogurt real hard and watched it squish all over the place. I mean, I found ways to enjoy things that I was disgusted with just because I decided to. That was it. I decided to. That has power. I didn't know what I was doing, but it worked. By about the 3rd or 4th day, I was like, I'd wake up in the morning, look forward to it. Oh boy, I get to wash dishes today. And I got to tell you something. So many times in life, I hear people tell me, well, gosh, if only this and this and this would happen, then I could enjoy my life. Or if I could just do this with my kids, then I'd be happy. Or if I didn't have to do this at work, then I'd really enjoy work. Let me let you in on a clue. In life, lots of things you don't just naturally enjoy, but you could if you decided to and committed to. And you found a way to find value. If you were committed to finding value, if you're committing to find joy, you can find it in anything. I learned that the hard way that turned out to be the easy way. Because I took that lesson and I applied it to my businesses when I came back home. I applied it to my ability to learn. And I began to use this belief system to guide some of my decisions in the future. But you know what? It's just like asking the right question once in a while, or using the words that intensify your positive feelings once in a while. Once we have a label for something, once we have an awareness of the impact of some of the things that we do, we can do them again and again and again and again. And that's why I've given this a term called quality quantifier. Want to increase the quality of your life? Good. Decide what level of quality you're committed to. 2, decide what's it going to take. What must you do in your beliefs, in your emotions, in your focus, and what you notice in the environment? What must you create so that you absolutely experience that? And make sure that the criteria you come up with are things you can control. By the way, could this work in areas that maybe you don't think of as real positive? You bet. On my way here into the studio, the sister of my producer stopped me outside by the car, and she said, do you know what's going on? And I said, no. And she said, well, my father is probably on his last leg tonight. He's really ill. He's in the hospital, and I think he's going to die tonight. And have you ever been in that position where you see somebody you really care about? You don't really know what to do, especially around this thing called death. I said, well, you remember the other day when we talked about this -10 to +10 thing I told you about? And she said, oh, yeah, it's really worked with the kids. It's fabulous. Her kids were the ones that I originally worked with and made the changes in how they liked the food. She said, yeah, it's really great. I said, well, I said, it may sound kind of weird, but if this really is going to be your father's last night, maybe one of the things you need to ask yourself while you're driving to the hospital, instead of why is this happening, is if you really know what's going to occur and it's a natural occurrence, maybe you need to ask yourself, what would it take for this to be a level 10 experience in my life and the life of my family? Level 10 may not be exciting. Level 10 is a different quality maybe in this context. Maybe level 10 is meaningful, a really meaningful experience, one that enhances and deepens the richness of life and your appreciation of it. I said, I once had an experience of visiting with a woman who was the mom of a very close friend of mine. I was asking myself, what could I give her? I mean, there's nothing that's going to stop her dying right now. What could I give her in these final moments or hours? We didn't know which. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great to just polish up her memories? I said, what if you just went tonight and you asked him questions that made him remember great memories? They remembered things, and maybe he didn't even respond, but they just made him smile, made him really think of some of the most joyous moments that you've all shared. Maybe in giving him that gift, you'll have it too. I said, maybe you just need to look into his eyes and say something special. What would you have to say to make this a level 10 experience? So that this process of death even could have a quality to it that would be different than if you just went there randomly with fear, or went there randomly wondering how you're going to respond, wondering what it's going to mean, and allowing the environment to cause you just to feel pain that may not even improve your life, or may make him feel pain just to see it in you. I don't know what's right or wrong. I don't know what's right for you personally, but you do. And I think what you have to decide is this is going to be a level 10 or 8 or 7 or whatever experience. You need to ask yourself, what conditions must you create in yourself and in this environment for this to be that kind of experience for you? Things you can control. The meaning, by the way, is something you can always control. What is this going to mean to you no matter what? And she smiled and they gave her a hug and she went on out. See, every one of us have a choice in life. We have a choice about how to think and how to feel. If we don't make that choice consciously, we pay a price. And that price is to allow the environment to determine how we feel. Right now, as we travel across this country, I see a tremendous number of people who are living in fear and uncertainty. They have a sense that they're no longer in control. Not just about their personal lives, but about the economy as a whole, about the future. People are worried about their businesses and their life and the direction where they're going to stay employed. But you know what? The truth of the matter is you can have a level of 10 experience out of anything. 2 men get fired from their job as cartoonists, and there's nobody else at the time who really employs cartoonists. It seems like such a horrible experience, except they decided it was going to be a level 10 experience. They decided since there is no other employment out there for cartoonists, that's a tremendous opportunity. So they go out and start a cartoon firm of their own. Their names are Hanna and Barbera. Today, they're the largest producers of cartoons in the world, and they're doing what they love most. Remember, what something means will be controlled by what you decide for it to mean. Remember that as you look around the environment, what seems horrible to everybody else will be horrible to you too if you just allow everybody else to teach you how to think. If you set a higher standard for yourself, if you decide no matter what happens, I'm going to pull something out of this experience that's going to empower me, that's going to make my life richer and better. And during the process, I'm going to find a way to find some joy or some meaning. If you make that decision and you ask what's it going to take, and you don't settle for anything but answers that you know will work, that you can control, I can promise you an increased quality of life for the rest of your life, no matter what happens. The point is simple. You have in your hands right now a very powerful tool that is so easy to use. The key question is, are you just going to listen to this? Are you going to say, yeah, that neat little idea, that quality quantifier, I ought to think about what the qualities are I want. I ought to quantify it with a number, and I ought to ask myself what I should do, but it seems like a lot of work having asked these 3 questions. No, what's a lot of work is having to suffer through the emotions you don't deserve to have just because you didn't think about things consciously and set a standard. If you do this, you'll develop the habit of not only using quality quantifiers, but the habit of never settling for less than you deserve in your life. After all, isn't that why you take the time to listen to these tapes? Isn't that why you pursue the new knowledge? You want to increase the quality of your life, the richness, the joy, the passion, the feeling of being alive. You deserve this. Give yourself this gift for the next 30 days. Use the quality quantifiers and develop the muscle that constantly increases the quality of your life. Do it and live it with passion.